in disbelief. Srila Prabhupada Ramaswara said, I think that's impossible. Maybe we can go faster. Srila Prabhupada suddenly stopped walking. Planting his cane firmly in the sand, he turned to Ramaswara and said, without anger but very gravely, impossible is a word found in the Fool's Dictionary. Suddenly Ramaswara realized his spiritual life was on the line. To say impossible now would mean he had no faith in Krishna's representative, no faith in the power of God. He must throw away his material estimations and rational common sense. Prabhupada ki. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, Text 4. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nunam pramata krute vikarma. Yadindriya pritaya aprinoti. Nasadumanye yata atmanoyam. Asannapi kleshada ashadeha. Nunam pramata krute vikarma. Yadindriya pritaya aprinoti. Nasadu manye yata atmanoyam. Asannapi kleshada ashadeha. Nunam pramate kurute vikarma. Yadindriya pritaya aprinoti. Nasadu manye yata atmanoyam. Asannapi kleshada ashadeha.
Nunam pramata kurute vikarma. Yatindriya pritaya aprinoti. Nasadamanye yata atmanayam. Asanati kleshada asadeha. Nunam pramata kurute vikarma. Yatindriya pritaya aprinoti. Nasadamanye yata atmanayam. Asanati kleshada asadeha.
Nunam, indeed. Pramata, mad. Kurute, performs. Vikarma, sinful activities forbidden in the scriptures. Yet, when Indriya Pritaye, for sense gratification. Shishikoni Time Akasheshiki. Aprinoti, engages. Na, not. Sadhu, befitting. Manye, I think. Yata, by which Atmana
Atma,
of the soul, Ayam this, Asan being temporary, Api although, Kleshada giving misery, Asha become possible, Deha the body. Translation. When a person considers sense gratification the aim of life, he certainly becomes mad after materialistic living and engages in all kinds of sinful activity. He does not know that due to his past misdeeds, he has already received a body which, although temporary, is the cause of his misery. Actually, the living entity should not have taken on the material body, but he has been awarded the material body for sense gratification. Therefore, I think it not befitting an intelligent man to involve himself again in the activities of sense gratification, by which he perpetually gets material bodies one after another. Begging, borrowing, and stealing to live for sense gratification is condemned in this verse, because such consciousness leads one to a dark, hellish condition. The four sinful activities are illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling. These are the means by which one gets another material body that is full of miseries. In the Vedas, it is said, Asango Hyayam Purusha. The living entity is not really connected with this material world, but due to his tendency to enjoy the material senses, he is put into the material condition. One should perfect his life by associating with devotees. He should not become further implicated in the material body. Chakshulon militam jina tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Makam Kuruchi Vachalam Pankam Tikarim Yakripakalam Bande Shri Guru Tinataram Opa Chubischa Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavani Bhyo Vaishnavi Bhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in the previous verse, Lord Rishabhdev is describing what's necessary if one wants to be liberated by reviving one's Krishna consciousness, or rather what not to do. And he's basically saying one should abstain from sex life. In the described, it means attachment to homes, wife, children, friends, wealth, laboring hard to maintain them without any other aim in life. But to So then he ends with those who are indifferent to their duties, execution of their duties. Such people are interested in collecting only enough money to keep body and soul together. So then the path to liberation is wide open. So then in this verse, he's describing how the result of someone who totally identifies with one's body, not knowing anything else, sex gratification is the aim of life. And there's no activity, because that's the goal, then no activity is seen as degrading. degraded. It's considered the consciousness of a mad person. It has no idea of how the results of his activities will just degrade him further to hellish lifetimes in hellish bodies. So this is the gross misunderstanding of how the body one is in is gotten by sense gratification. So if one doesn't want further bodies, then there has to be an alternative. Lord Rishabdev says how actually the living entities should not have taken on the material body. So this material body, in fact, the whole cosmic manifestation, material world, is created by desire. The living entity wants to be happy, so he thinks he can be happy. His nature is to be eternally happy, but his madness is that he thinks he can be happy, eternally happy in a world where everything is temporary. And in his ignorance, unbeknown to him, this temporary happiness brings about this drive for temporary happiness is ignorance, and therefore it turns in so much misery. So if one is to consider oneself intelligent, then one has to go beyond what the mind accepts and rejects, but develop one's intelligence by engaging in devotional service. In this way, it breaks the living entity's constant contemplation on the objects of the senses, which bring him down to downward spiral into the material pool, and instead engage the mind in pleasing Krishna, satisfying Krishna's senses. And this is difficult for us to do because the conditioning by the material nature can run so deep that even when we can give up the gross sense gratification, as Prabhupada lists here, the four simple activities, but still subtly, in their subtle form, they still may be there. Because we may be attached to a material designation in the form of which can be manifested in the desire for name, fame, adoration, and gain. Still wanting something from the situation we're in, even spiritually. So this is due to a misidentification of, still again, once identifying with the present body and the mind that we have. And the desires to enjoy as the controller, proprietor, like that. But this is But Krishna consciousness is so powerful that it can diminish or slow down and stop this this way of this form of ignorance to engage the body in service of Krishna and engage your mind and senses. And it says how just a little endeavor on this path can deter one from the most dangerous type of fear, which is to degrade into further animal bodies, or just to guarantee one a human body in the next life, so that one can continue. So that the way we can gauge how free we are from these subtle forms of sex life in the form of name, fame, adoration, and gain, then is to be basically humble. It can be overcome by seeing oneself as simply a servant of Krishna, trying to give him pleasure, getting to know what pleases him, and not putting ourselves, avoiding putting ourselves in the center. We see so many the acharyas and senior devotees, how even though they're obviously so advanced, they consider themselves not very advanced, and still a long way to go. So what to speak of us? It's how to think ourselves other than who we are, or to think ourselves more advanced than we are, or to not take stock of our actual position and progress from there. It's considered like a type of madness also. In that regard, there was one. I was just listening to a lecture by Bhakti Vikash Maharaj saying how the president of the Prime Minister of India, I think he is, President Narendra Modi, he went to visit what do you call them? Psychiatric hospital, yeah. And he approached one of the inmates and he asked him how, so began speaking to him, and then then the inmate said, "Well, who are you? What are you doing here? What's your name?" And he said, "Narendra Modi." And he said, "Don't say that. I said that, and they put me in here." So that the mind can convince us of so much, puts in such illusion of grandeur, with just a little ability, just with being given a position and so on. It's so tricky. So that's why is it Lord Chaitanya? He said how we should string this verse around our neck. Chanadapi Sunichana, Taropi Sahishnana, Amani Namanadina, Kirtanas Hari. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw on the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of forced prestige, and should be ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So, we can, by performing our service with enthusiasm and determination, we can become self-realized, And in this position, we're not affected by the dualities of this material world, pain and pleasure, honor, dishonor, loss or gain, that our mind is perfectly equiposed in knowledge. And in this way, we're no longer affected by or overwhelmed with anger or attachment or fear, and being totally absorbed in our own Krishna consciousness, delighting in that, and and this is nurtured by Krishna conscious discussion, relating everything to Krishna in some way, to be so practiced. Any questions or comments on this point? Yes, Prabhu?
I'm just wondering, for somebody that's living outside in normal society, it's quite a contrast, quite a transition from living inside a society that's based upon these values of humility and if we're interacting with the outside world, then it's okay to behave very humble and non-assuming within a society that appreciates that. But wouldn't that be counterproductive to do that outside? That's our own society, our own spiritual society.
But there definitely are people who, in the category of begging, borrowing, stealing, to live for sense gratification and take advantage of people's innocence, willing to go to any lengths to do so. So many turn from just stealing their bank details to more horrific types of exploitation. But if one's sincerely practicing Krishna consciousness to the best of their ability, at least according to capacity, then Krishna can give the intelligence. That's the nice thing about devotional service. We're connecting with the Super Soul. We have Guru and Sastra, and the whole Bhagavatam is how to deal in different situations. So Krishna can give some direction from within or without in the association of devotees. And with that direction, one has the confidence to move among materialistic people without being affected. And one's intelligence in place, that they're not deluded by them. Sometimes it may take some practice, but Krishna's, as they surrender unto me, I will reward them accordingly, Krishna says. So the more we endeavor to take shelter in the form of his holy name, in the form of devotional service, as hearing from Vaishnavas, then the path is more clear. Because each person's situation is unique. So it's up to the individual to approach devotees for direction, or like that. It's maybe good to know devotees in one's own situation. If one's a businessman, to contact devotees who are also in business, who can give maybe more individual direction like that. For a devotee living in a temple, maybe who has no knowledge of these things, it may be difficult. Spiritual direction can be there. But for finer details, then to seek someone whose association, a person who's in a situation similar to theirs. Like, ordinarily a sannyasi won't be able to give instruction to a grihasta, not knowing, personally having experience, but maybe because he's had so many, he has sannyasi, grihasta disciples and hears of their trials and tribulations and successes, then he may be qualified. So, okay. Would you have an answer to your question?
I just thought of the example that Mahatma often uses, the Amish community, and somebody broke in to the told all the boys to leave the classroom and then shot all the girls. And then that evening they'd forgiven the mothers of the children of the girls who were killed. They went over to see the man's wife who'd shot them, and he'd committed suicide by that time. And, but they just said that, well, we forgive him, and if you're struggling, you're welcome to come and stay in our community and we'll look after you. And then later on, some bishop guy, I think it was glorifying the Amish, saying it wasn't a decision that they made, it was just who they are. So they didn't. And you would think, well, that's maybe not such a good way to be in the material world. People take advantage, but maybe we don't have to worry about that. Maybe we just have to be who we are, and the example will shine out, and people will see us for what we are. That we're genuinely spiritual people. We don't have to try and. We're also Srila Prabhupada said when you're dealing with a fox, you have to be more cunning. So he was like Srila Prabhupada was very wise about how the material world worked, and safeguarding so that the devotees didn't get cheated. So it's just an interesting how we face that challenge, how we interact with society.
It's something that many kind of new communities, there's communities become more alternative communities is something that's growing in the world due to background of climate change and the effects of industrialization and so on. And one thing that's a common challenge is their interactions with one another. How they're used to having their opinions listened to and enacted, but so there's so many people like that. So it can be the cause of the dysfunction of the community, and they break up. So rather than like the English community, very accommodating, it's a Christian community. So unless there's acceptance of someone else in charge other than themselves, and living according to his God's ideals and ways in which we live should be, then unless God is there, then someone's going to think that they're God in that situation and consider their perspective on things to be greater than anybody else's. So only one person can be God. So if the community follows his ways that he prescribes, lives in the way that he prescribes, then peace and prosperity can be there, and nothing can affect that. Like Srila Prabhupada said, our movement can only be disrupted or destroyed from within, not from without. And we're a community that, farming communities are expected in the future to receive tens and thousands of people within their community to provide a shelter for them. So that takes a big heart, that takes a lot of tolerance and compassion for them as spiritual beings. And they must have had some kind of understanding, this community, how this is the material world, these things happen. And we've just got to continue and in such a way that we leave this world altogether and not return to undergo these upheavals, where one lifetime we're the victim and another lifetime we're the perpetrator. And develop this that tendency to enjoy materially with no considering that there's no God in control. Any other comments or questions or reflections?
We had a devotee Tejas, Prabhupada disciple, came, and he was saying the challenge for our society is, can we convince professional people? And I'm just reading right now Swami in a Strange Land by Yogeshwar, and Srila Prabhupada's doing these huge Pandal programs, but the intelligentsia are less inclined, they're a little bit more hesitant to step forward at first. And then by coming in contact with Srila Prabhupada and his disciples, and seeing, they've never seen white-bodied people with so much enthusiasm for kirtan. So then they start to become convinced, So Tejas was saying that the challenge for our society is can we now convince the professional people in society? But to be able to convince people who are professional, then you have to be very efficient. If they see inefficiency, because they don't have that spiritual vision to appreciate the sincerity and the humility and all the good qualities that are there, then unfortunately we don't really go to start work with professional people. You see, we're very hard-working, we're very competent, and very efficient about the things that we're doing. Then they become interested, they become convinced, and they'll start to take it up themselves. So they said it was the sentimental 60s, the sloppy 70s, and then they went to the expert 80s, and then I don't know what for the 19s or whatever, but we have to get to the point where we're becoming professional. People like that will start to take our society more seriously.
To work as one leader, each have a role to play to act according to that role. Because no one of us can do it on our own, so we're kind of interdependent, and the more that one cooperates, the more one is, then that's how the strength lies in that cooperation. This is how obedience is the first principle, and with authorities as they instruct and kindly give direction, and then we can move forward as like a movement. A movement means that it moves ahead, so the more we do so, like Vrindavan's come so far, and to continue with that cooperative spirit. There's new challenges there, but as we work to overcome them as a unit, and we're all on the same page, then that's where our strength lies. And to just be a matter of time before with that kind of efficiency is manifest, is materialized. It all starts with controlling the mind and the senses, and to any doubts or disturbances that come up, to address them, see the Krishna conscious perspective, and work towards that oneself, to be the example, and then we become qualified to teach.
On the point of you saying to cooperate, and Sri Ramanuj has been giving the success to him, and he says that it's only when you come to the stage of Nishta that humility, actual humility starts to come in. So obviously your ability to cooperate is going to be very compromised if there's a lot of false ego in there, and a lot of pride. And this is just the third verse to Nanapi, but it will take quite a long time to get to that stage. It's the stage of Nishta, which is when 75% of the analysis have been removed. So that's like one way you could charter the progress of our society, is how quickly the devotees reach the stage of Nishta and then become really genuinely humble, and then the synergy will take place because there'll be a real cooperation starting to take place. And he was saying humility isn't just groveling around all the time, just walking everywhere on your belly, but to give up your way of doing things and do everything Krishna's way, or Srila Prabhupada's way. Just to say, okay, we're going to do it this way. And Srila Prabhupada, one of Srila Prabhupada's ways was that he had a strong line of authority. You just fall in line with what whoever decides to be the captain of the ship, once he's decided to be the captain of the ship, everyone's agreed to it, you can't start squabbling about, well, actually, I don't think he's doing it so well, you've committed. No, he's going to do it. So just comply and that was Prabhupada's way. So to come to that stage, that's real humility.
And then it will take a lot of inquiry to understand what's the bigger picture is, so that we can know if we're caught in a circumstance, we can act on our own, kind of use our own intelligence how to act in different circumstances when we don't have the immediate the person there to tell us what to do, and we in a given situation, if we understand the bigger picture, then we're able to act accordingly to in different situations. For example, I'm kind of confused just now what our line of preaching is, especially where, for example, the vegan issue is, because for so long we were having outside programs and cooking vegan or something. But it doesn't see so much there just now. Not that we're not doing outside programs, but what our stand is in this kind of issue. Supposing we have vegan devotees or volunteers, do we provide for them, do we not provide for them? And so like that. So for me, how do I approach someone who's that way inclined? It's just a kind of personal dilemma I find myself in. So so to understand the bigger picture, what is wanted, which direction are we going in, to what end, and then we can fall in line accordingly, in our preaching and everything. Everybody's on the same page. Not speaking according to their own desires or preferences. So, if that's okay with everyone, I'll stop there. So just in conclusion, we can come out of this madness of first sense gratification simply by performing devotional service to Krishna, and by receiving his direction, we nourish our intelligence to see where we're at and how conditioned we are in different ways to be able to overcome them. And in the association of devotees, and actively discussing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, in whatever situation we are, wherever we're situated, so that we're applying our intelligence to understand. And in this way, we're worshipping Krishna by our intelligence. So thank you very much. Grandchild Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Prabhupada ki, Vrinda ki, Thakur, Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki, Thakur.